Hi everybody, welcome. Welcome to today's session. I'm Michelle DuVal with the Mindful Center. I've got what I think to be a really wonderful workshop for you here today. I'm glad you can join me. We'll get started in just about 2 minutes. We're 2 minutes before the hour. We'll get started right on the hour. So we're going to do one contemplative meditation as part of today's session, and we'll do one straight up meditation. So we'll do about 2 little practices, meditative practices. So if you want to get your cushions close by or something for your back, keep yourself comfortable. Some people take notes, some people don't. So whatever you need for the workshop, go ahead and keeping in mind that we will be doing a couple of guided meditative practices. Okay, so yeah, just getting set in. I always start these just about 2 minutes beforehand. I start the stream so that I can get everything arranged. We can land in the session. It doesn't just start the moment you press play, right? So just about 1 more minute. I'm going to guzzle some water away from the microphone. I say that, but then I forget to do it. But anywho, there's so many considerations when you have a big ol' honking microphone in your face, right? You can hear lots of stuff. I've noticed that I've been hearing my stomach gurgling on some of the recordings, and there's really nothing I can do about it, so forgive me. My stomach gurgles, if you hear other stuff, but the most important thing is that we're here, we're together. I'm going to do my darndest to share with you some incredible teachings that were shared with me along my path of learning, and I hope they bring you benefit. Do some meditation. Great way to start the day. Okay, so looks like it is on the hour. Let me just collect myself. Welcome everybody, welcome to today's workshop. I'm Michelle DuVal of the Mindful Center. Today we're going to be discussing a topic called enjoyment. Enjoyment. So the word we're most familiar with is enjoyment, right? E-N-J-O-Y-M-E-N-T. Today we're going to be discussing a word, a term, a practice, a description called enjoyment, I-N-J-O-Y-M-E-N-T, which describes a slightly different phenomenon than the word we're more commonly familiar with, enjoyment. So enjoyment, if you look it up, it's kind of hard to find, but it does come up in the Urban Dictionary, which I love sometimes, although you got to be careful looking up things with kids around, because there's some ways of understanding things that might not be kid-friendly in the Urban Dictionary. But actually, this word came up in the Urban Dictionary that says enjoy. The word enjoy is stronger than enjoy. For enjoy is more of joy that's filling you from inside of yourself. Enjoy means having internal joy. Not bad. So the way that I'm most familiar with the word in my world of meditation and meditation teachings and practices is when the word enjoyment is used to describe the moment you realize peace and happiness can come from inside your own mind. Let me say that again. So the definition that I use of enjoyment is it's a word used to describe the moment you realize that peace and happiness can come from or can arise from within your own mind. So when we think of enjoyment, the word that we're most commonly familiar with, right? We tend to think of some of the things that we enjoy. Like you might enjoy dinner with friends, or you might really enjoy a vacation on the beach in Tahiti, or maybe you enjoy swimming pools or time off from work. Maybe you really enjoy the holidays, all the decorating. Maybe you enjoy traveling, or maybe for you, enjoyment is really found from staying home and cozying up with a good book, right? So when you think about the word enjoy and what brings you enjoyment, mostly what we're thinking about is what we're doing, where we're doing it, and who we're doing it with. So that's most commonly what comes to mind when we think about enjoyment. What we're doing, where we're doing it, and with whom we're doing it with. Right? So this primarily describes an experience that's dependent on external conditions, right? So it's an experience that's dependent upon having what you would consider to be good external conditions. Whereas in enjoyment, on the other hand, enjoyment can be experienced independent of our external conditions. And this is one of the main reasons why you might never have even heard of this word before. Because for most of us, we can't even really imagine that we could have experiences of deep internal peace, happiness, and joy arising from within our own minds, even when we don't have great external conditions. Like for most of us, we can't even imagine that happening, right? Where you could have an experience of peace and happiness arising from within your own mind that isn't dependent on where you are, what you're doing, and who you're doing it with. So for example, most of us have never even really considered the possibility that you could have enjoyment in the hospital having a tricky procedure. That's probably not something you would ever associate with feelings of peace and happiness, right? Or being at your desk at work. Have you ever really considered the possibility that you could experience deep peace and happiness that's arising from within your own mind when you're stuck at your desk at work? Or when you're stuck in traffic? Or doing your taxes, or whatever it is, right? So for a lot of us, this is really unfamiliar territory, meaning that we don't even consider it as a possibility most of the time that we could have experiences of internal joy, peace, and happiness, even when we're not where we want to be, even when we're not doing the things we want to be doing, and even when we're not doing the things we want to be doing with the people and maybe even the pets that we want to be doing them with, right? So for most people, this is really something that we might not even have ever even considered as a possibility before. So that's where we're going to start with here today. We're going to do a little contemplative meditation here, and I'm going to guide you through it, where we just kind of sit with this consideration of this even being a possibility. Like, could I consider the possibility that I could be at peace at work? Or that I could experience peace and happiness arising from within my own mind when I'm doing my taxes, or stuck in traffic, or doing my chores, or having a dental procedure, or whatever it is. That's where we're going to kind of start, just even first considering that this could be a possibility. Okay, so let's get ready to do a brief contemplative meditation. So for this practice, because it is primarily around contemplation, thinking about something, you can just kind of go ahead and close your eyes. Maybe taking 1 or 2 deeper breaths. And then just letting the breath return to natural. And just taking a moment just to kind of feel into the body, as a way of just coming into the present. And now what I want you to do is, I want you to just imagine that peace and happiness can arise from within yourself. So we're just kind of imagining that it's possible for peace and happiness to arise from within the mind. Maybe you've experienced it before, maybe you haven't. Doesn't actually matter, because we're just imagining that it's possible for peace and happiness to arise from within the mind. And if you can imagine that this is indeed possible, I want you to now see if you can begin to practice believing that it's something that can actually happen to you. So we're just kind of exploring what it might feel like if we actually did believe that peace and happiness can arise from within our own minds. Like we're practicing believing that this could actually happen for us. So seeing if you can practice believing that it's possible for you to experience peace at work, for example, or doing chores. So what might it feel like if you actually believed you could be at peace doing chores or at work? What would that feel like if you believed this could happen for you? So just seeing if you can imagine yourself being totally peaceful doing your taxes or whatever it is, doing chores at work. Can you imagine that? And then just seeing if you can believe, just in this moment, that this is actually possible for you, that you could actually experience this. What would it feel like to believe that? Okay, you can kind of come back into your body right now. Maybe taking a couple of deeper breaths, maybe stretching and moving the body a little bit. And then just opening your eyes when you're ready. So what we just did there is a practice called beneficial believing. Beneficial believing. The practice of beneficial believing is where you actually practice holding a certain belief that just might cause you benefit, and you kind of like try it on for size a little bit. It would be like, what would the experience be like if I actually believed that peace was possible to experience at work? Like, what would that feel like? What possibilities does that open for me? Might it bring me benefit if I actually did believe that I could experience peace at work or at the gym or stuck in traffic, whatever it is? So that's the practice of beneficial believing. And the practice of beneficial believing really leverages the understanding that our beliefs are not actually fixed. They're not static. How most people relate to beliefs is like you either believe something or you don't. And so we tend to relate to our beliefs as kind of like a fixed entity somewhere within us. But if you were to reflect back on your life, I know for myself, I sure as heck do not have the same beliefs that I had when I was 10 years old, when I was 20 years old, when I was 30 years old, when I was even 40 years old, right? So if you reflect back on your life, it's kind of easy to see that your belief system has always been quite fluid, right? And definitely as we get older, we tend to get a little bit more rigid or lose some flexibility as it relates to our beliefs. This is because there's so much uncertainty that starts to present as we get older, and so your brain has a tendency to really cling to things that it can hang its hat on, things it can be certain about, and sometimes beliefs will fall into that category. But then what happens if we get really rigid belief systems is it can be really, really hard to stay happy and peaceful out in community with others, right? Because a fundamental principle of our world is that it's ever changing. So your world is always changing, and if your beliefs don't change with the times, then you start to experience daily conflict with your world. You have like a very negative meeting point with your world if you're holding on to a system of beliefs that served you 10 years ago, but the world has changed, right? So beneficial believing leverages the fact that our belief system is fluid. It always has been fluid, and hopefully we can use our meditative practice and practices such as beneficial believing to help keep some fluidity within our belief systems. So we practice trying on a belief, for example, that it's actually possible to experience enjoyment, this feeling of peace and happiness arising within our own minds, independent of what we're doing, where we're doing it, and who we're doing it with, right? So if we go back to my understanding of this word enjoyment, my understanding of this word is that it's used to describe the moment. So it's used to describe the moment we realize that peace and happiness can come from within our own mind, independent of our external conditions. So enjoyment is really a description of the moment. The moment that we have the realization that, hey, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I still have another hour of work still in front of me. And I could actually be happy right now. That's the realization, or that's the moment where you realize, even though it's 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, still at work for another hour, I don't necessarily have to relate to this experience in the same way that I always have. I don't have to be grumpy right now. I don't have to be irritated. I don't have to be stressed in this moment. I could actually experience peace and happiness in this moment. I could actually experience enjoyment in this moment, if only I could create a kind of a mental shift, right? And that's what a realization is. It's having a mental shift of sorts, right? So it's having that mental shift. I could actually allow myself to be at peace, to feel happy, and still be at work for another hour. Sound outrageous? Well, it might, but probably just because most of us have never even considered something like that before. It's a mind shift, isn't it? And if you imagine that this is possible to happen to you, like really imagine it, like in this moment, let's do it. It's 4 p.m. You have on a Tuesday, you have another hour of work yet in front of you, or another hour of doing chores before you can relax. Imagine yourself in that situation. And you have the realization that I don't have to be grumpy and upset about this. I could actually do something different with my mind in these moments. So that's the realization. That's the moment described by the word enjoyment. It's like, a moment of fresh air, a moment of realization that shifts our minds. It's a moment within which we open to possibility instead of staying in the habit that we've always had, which is, if I'm not doing what I want, when I want, and with whom I want to be doing it, then by golly, I can't be happy and at peace, right? That's how we've always related to things. So this is like opening to a moment of possibility. It's a moment of opening. Not that long ago, I ran into an acquaintance of mine. He's somebody in my life that I've known forever. I don't even actually know how I really know him. I think it was back in high school. Just someone I've known forever. We're kind of just acquaintances. We're not that close, but I ran into him not that long ago at the grocery store. And I glanced into his cart, and he had like a couple bottles of wine. He had like some lamb chops. He had some olives and feta cheese and some olive oils and stuff. And I was like, wow, it looks like a pretty good grocery cart. It looks like you're having a party. And he said, once a month, his uncle always comes over to his house and cooks this big Greek dinner. His uncle is from Greece. And he would cook this big, authentic, traditional Greek dinner, and they'd always invite a bunch of friends and families over, and they did this once a month. It was like a family tradition. And this guy said, I'm always just in charge of buying the ingredients, right? So these were the ingredients for this big dinner. And I said, wow, awesome. Hey, man, it sounds like you're really doing good. I'm happy for you. It sounds like you're doing good. And he gave me this kind of funny look, and he said, yeah, honestly, it's just more of the same. And I was like, it wasn't at all what I was expecting him to say. I thought he would be like, I'm excited for the party, whatever. Instead he goes, honestly, it's just more of the same. And then he kind of did this buddy thing with me where he was like, you know what I mean? It's just like more of the same humdrum day after day kind of stuff. No big deal, whatever, kind of more of the same. And he's just an acquaintance of mine, and we were like at the grocery store in the produce department, so I didn't feel like it was the right time to get into some big discussion. So I was like, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. We hugged and we went our separate ways. And I kind of thought about it, what he said, for a while, and I realized that I did not believe that about my life at all. And I think for me, where this primarily comes from is receiving, a couple years ago, as many of you know, I got a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I think that a lot of you can probably relate to what I'm about to say, is that when you've received a diagnosis, right? So you're going along, living your life, your humdrum, day-to-day life, going to work, paying the bills, getting food on the table, whatever it is. And then suddenly you go in for a routine checkup. That was my experience. And I remember that moment that the radiologist said, this is cancer. And I said, are you sure? And she said, I am sure. This is breast cancer. This is cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, my mind exploded in that moment. I drove home. I called everybody. I didn't go back to work that day. And in fact, I really didn't go back to work for the next couple of days because my mind was so stressed, freaked out, all over the place, didn't know what to think. And then if you've ever had this experience, it's like a series of tests and waiting for results. And so it can last a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even longer. And throughout all this period, it's really hard to focus. It's hard to just go back to work and focus on all your tasks again. And for me, in those moments, all I wanted was to be able to go back to my humdrum life that I had before I went in for the damn mammogram, right? I would have given anything to just be able to go back to my humdrum, more of the same daily life. There's a movie that I show sometimes in one of my classes, and in the movie, it's a documentary, there's a guy describing how his experience when he received a diagnosis of MS. He was on the younger side of things. He had a very young family. He was just starting this important job at this hospital, and he received the diagnosis, and how he described it, I thought it was so good. He said it was like a giant hand just reached in and snatched his life away, just took his life away. And that's really how it feels. Like you just get this life that you've may have been even taken for granted or getting bored with, or letting your stress get out of control, or whatever it is. Suddenly all that's taken away. And in those moments, you just want that boring life back again, right? And once you've survived something like that, something shifts. And it's very hard to then go back to what my friend was describing as just more of the same, that kind of mental attitude. So I think this practice of enjoyment, which is really the practice of intentionally allowing ourselves to have this moment of realization. So it's the practice of enjoyment is the practice of intentionally allowing ourselves to have this moment of realization, or to intentionally open ourselves up to the fact that even though I'm here at work, or even though I'm here doing my stupid taxes, or even though I'm having this incredibly uncomfortable procedure, even though I'm not where I want to be doing what I want to be doing with the people and the pets I want to be doing it with, even though I'm not getting great external conditions, this moment is precious. That's the realization that this is a moment of my life, and because of that, and that alone, it is precious. That's the realization that allows for that moment of enjoyment. So when my father was still teaching meditation, he used a different word than the word enjoyment. He used a word that's much more commonly used in meditative teachings. And the word that he used is bliss. Bliss. So in meditative teachings, bliss is defined as an achievable, heightened state of awareness. That's what bliss is within the context of meditative practices. It's an achievable, heightened state of awareness. Bliss is this heightened state of awareness is also considered the major benefit of a daily meditation practice. And it's really the catalyst for an experience of a more thoughtful, engaged, and enlightened life. This heightened sense of awareness, heightened state of awareness, bliss. So here's how my father used to describe bliss, or what I'm calling here enjoyment. So my father used to say, imagine that you're on a beach and it's this beautiful, beautiful beach, this gorgeous white expanse of sand. There's 2 palm trees poking up out of the sand. There's a hammock swinging between those 2 palm trees, and you're in the hammock. And in one instance, you're in that hammock thinking, oh my gosh, this is the best vacation I've ever had. Earlier today, we went snorkeling. Tonight, we get to eat dinner with all our best friends in Swan Court. Tomorrow, we're going to go on this magical hike. Oh my God, I'm having such a great time. I'm enjoying this vacation so much. I'm so happy. So that's one experience. Now let's take the same beach, the same gorgeous white expanse of sand, same glorious palm trees poking up out of the sand, same hammock swinging between them, and again, you are in the hammock. Only this time, the feeling, not the thought, the feeling is, I'm alive. I'm alive. So in the first instance, that's a description of enjoyment, or commonly understood enjoyment, enjoyment. You're enjoying your wonderful external conditions. Enjoyment is usually a very busy, active mind thinking about stuff, and it's a mind that's very attached in the moment to things being marvelous, wonderful. You're doing what you want to be doing, where you want to be doing it, with the people and pets that you want to be doing it with. The second example was more a description of an experience of bliss or enjoyment, where it's just the feeling, not a super active, busy mind. You're not like clinging and clutching to all the things you've done, all the things you get to do tonight and tomorrow. You're just in the moment, fully present, and you have that realization that this moment is magical and precious just by virtue of the fact that I am alive. That's how he used to describe bliss. So one is a busy, active mind attached to the what, the who, and the where of our external conditions. The second is a mind that's having the realization. It's having that active, direct experience that this moment is precious. And the truth of it is that you don't need the beach and the palm trees to have it. It makes it a lot easier. I'm not going to deny it. It makes it easier at times, for sure. But you don't need the beach and the palm trees to have this state of mind. With practice and with training, mental training, which is just repetition of practice, you can practice having the realization of enjoyment. You can practice training yourself, right? Repetition of practice, where you over and over and over again allow for this moment of realization that this moment is precious just by virtue of the fact that I get to still be alive, even though it's 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, or even though I'm doing my taxes or chores or whatever it is. You can be at work, you can be in traffic, you can be sitting at home in a humdrum moment with the kiddos, and you're like bored silly with all their complaining. You can still have this moment. We're alive. We're alive. And because of this, this moment is precious. So realization, realizing, is an act of either figuring something out, or it's an act of simply becoming aware. So having a realization or realizing is either an act of figuring something out, right? You have a lot of conceptual thought, you're hammering away at a math problem and suddenly you realize the answer, right? That's one way to have a realization. Or it's an act of simply becoming aware. It's an experience of raising your level of awareness. Remember that bliss, how we define bliss, is simply a heightened state of awareness, right? So when we have a realization about something, it can be a moment when our awareness, like it lifts, it rises, it sees above and up beyond the apparent chaos and confusion of any given moment. So when you raise your level of awareness, when your awareness heightens, it's like you almost like lift your head above the muck for a moment and you remember the overarching truth of the reality of that moment, which is that you're still alive. You have life. You have the ability, the gift to be at work, to be able to supply for your family, for yourself, to be able to have the mental and cognitive skills to be able to do your taxes, that you have a home within which you need to do chores because you have this beautiful gift of having a home. It's like you lift your minds out of the constrained way of normal, conventional thinking, and you become aware that other possibilities are absolutely present in any given moment. So many, many years ago, I was living in New Orleans, of all places. Me and my bestest buddy of all time, Claudio, we came back. We had been traveling. We went to Spain and Morocco, and when we came in Egypt, that's right. And when we came back, we kind of was just like, where do we want to land? And for whatever reason, well, we were young. We were like 21 years old. We chose New Orleans. We thought that would be so much fun. So we moved to New Orleans, didn't know anybody. We got the first apartment we could find, which was right in the heart of the quarter in New Orleans. And then 5 seconds later, we took the first job that we got offered, which was about, I don't know, 250 feet from our apartment in the quarter. It was also in the quarter. And then we spent the next, I don't know how long we stayed there, maybe a month, 2 months. It's kind of a blur, if I'm completely honest. And all we really ever did was we went to work in the quarter, and then we were waiting tables at a restaurant, popular restaurant. And so then after work, we'd go out and party in the quarter, and we didn't have a car, so we never really left the quarter. And I don't know, when bars close at 2, you end up going home, or I always used to go home at that time. When bars never close, which was New Orleans, I would get home at like 6 in the morning, be like, what the heck? Have to sleep all day to wake up to go to the restaurant. And we were just caught in this cycle. We even only ever ate. We found this cheap po' boy spot right in the quarter, so we never left the quarter. We were what's called quarter rats. We never left the quarter. And then one day my dad came to visit us, and he was like, what are you doing? This is crazy. This is horrible. We were like, what do you mean? We're living the dream. We're living the life. He was like, really? Are you happy? I looked at myself in the mirror. I had dark bags under my eyes. I was like not feeling good, not exercising, not eat. I had shrimp po' boys for probably 2 months straight for lunch, right? Drinking and just awful. And what he was bringing with us was like an outside perspective. And when we kind of opened to seeing things from his perspective for a moment, we realized, what the heck are we doing? And I'll never forget this. My dad goes, let's leave. Let's leave. We were like, what? Leave it? What? We have jobs. We have an apartment. And he's like, call the restaurant, quit your job. We put all of our furniture out on the street, which, by the way, turns out to be illegal in New Orleans. But we left so fast, we didn't experience any of the consequences. But anyways, we put all of our furniture out on the sidewalk, called and quit our jobs. And we were driving out of the quarter, which we hadn't left for so long. And I remember looking back and seeing this small contained space within which I'd been living, and I'd lost my perspective. And now that we were pulling back a little bit, I again could experience this heightened awareness, this kind of breath of fresh air, right? Where I was able to see things from a new perspective, get my head out of the muck of day-to-day doing XYZ and just see things from a broader, bigger perspective. So a realization, that to me was one of my pivotal realizations in my life, where first time without meditation, I experienced this heightened level of awareness thanks to my father. So realizing something, a realization is to become aware of something that you weren't aware of before. So realization is a form of awareness. When we understand that bliss is a heightened state of awareness, bliss is a heightened state of awareness. So you're able to see things from a heightened perspective, from a higher perspective that you weren't able to see before. Bliss is that heightened state of awareness. And so is enjoyment. We're really talking about the same thing here, just slightly different words. Enjoyment, bliss is really the same thing. They're both heightened states of awareness. This realization, this experience of bliss, this experience of enjoyment, it happens when you're able to lift your head above the muck, lift your head above the way things are conventionally appearing to you, when you're able to lift your head above the way you've always seen things before, done things before, and see it differently from a heightened perspective. So when you're able to see that even though I'm at work, or even though I'm at the dentist, or even though I'm doing my taxes, by golly, I'm alive. And this life of mine, and this moment of my life, which is really what your whole life is comprised of anyways, moments, right? This moment of my precious life is precious. And if a giant hand just suddenly reached in and grabbed it all away from me, I'd want it back. That's because it's precious. And when you realize this, when you have this moment of realization, peace and happiness can begin to arise from within your own mind. Let me say this again. When you realize this, when you have this moment of realization that just by virtue of the fact that I'm still alive, I'm able to breathe, I'm able to think, I'm able to feel, I'm able to eat, I'm able to respirate, I'm able to digest, all of these things that become so humdrum and we take for granted, of course, until they're snatched away from us, right? The moment that you realize that this moment is precious, independent of what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, and who I'm doing it with, that's the moment that enables an experience of peace and happiness to begin to arise from within your own mind. So I want to do a meditation with you now that you probably knew that was coming, right? Good. I'm glad you did. I want to do a meditation with you now that can really encourage us to at least begin to open more to the realization that any moment that we're alive, we can feel peace and happiness. Any moment that we're alive, we can feel peace and happiness and joy. We just have to have that realization, right? Of course, some moments are easier than others, and some moments are even much, much, much easier than others to feel it within. But even so, even though some moments are easier within which to experience peace and happiness, that doesn't make it impossible that we can feel peace, that we can be in that hammock experiencing the bliss of any moment of just being alive, any time, any place, no matter what we're doing, where we're doing it, and who we're doing it with. That's enjoyment. Okay, so let's get ready to meditate. So we've been sitting for a while. Most of us have. Let's take some moments to just really attend to your body. Stretching and moving however you need to. I'll share with you the meditation we're about to do can be very relaxing. So you want to move and stretch the body now in a way that helps prepare yourself to stay awake, right? You can really not get the benefits out of meditation if you're asleep. You can get the benefits of sleep when you're asleep, but you're not going to get the benefits of meditation if you fall asleep while you meditate. So moving and stretching in a way that can kind of wake you up, standing up even if that's helpful. And then whenever you're ready to do so, you can begin to establish a way of sitting. And you want to sit in a way that you can still be comfortable and relaxed, but that you can stay awake within, right? So you don't want to be too comfortable and too relaxed. You want to have some physical focus if you can. And then once you've established your posture, you can take a couple of deeper breaths. Just really as a way to signal to the central nervous system that we're entering meditation. We're entering a different state of being than normal. And then you can allow your breathing to return to natural. And just beginning to move into this present moment experience of the body, feeling the body. Feeling the breath moving through the body. Just feeling the breath rising and falling. Rising and falling. Giving your complete attention now to this feeling of rising and falling of the breath. So just kind of turning yourself over to this feeling of breath, as though it's the only thing that exists in this moment, this feeling of breath. Feeling the rising and the falling, the lifting and the lowering. Just kind of riding the waves of breath. So all of your attention is absorbing into the breath. Letting all of your problems and concerns be harmlessly absorbed into the breath, into this rising and falling. And now I want you to imagine that the waves of your breath are in sync with the waves in the ocean. So just imagine that. So breath in and breath out. Tide in and tide out. And seeing this rhythmic inning and outing of breath, of waves on the shores of bright white sand. So seeing this now in your mind's eye. And let's say it's evening time at our ocean. So there's a white moon overhead and white sands upon which your breathing rolls in and rolls out with the ocean. tall palm trees in the pure white sand, and a hammock hanging between them, and you're in the hammock. Let yourself feel that now, if you can. The ocean in sync with your breath. We breathe together. There's harmony in the moment. Light breezes and moonlight. Let yourself be totally absorbed by this experience. Really feel yourself there, here, at peace, a sense of bliss, perhaps, in the moment. Breathing with the ocean. All of your problems and concerns absorbed harmlessly into the ocean of breath. You are safe in the hammock. The temperature of the night is exactly your temperature. And so everything blends and breathes in the moment. A sense of peace and bliss arising from within your own mind. From within this experience of this moment. Peace and bliss arising from within your own mind in this moment. heart open and soften, even if it's just a little bit. Letting your heart and mind open in the safety of your hammock, of this ocean breath. What if you could be peaceful, blissful in this moment? What might it feel like if you could be peaceful, blissful in this moment? You can go ahead and put your toe in the water, and then your whole foot. The water is fresh and clear. You can push off from the shore to swim in the waters of peace and bliss. Peace and bliss breathe with you, you with them. Your hammock swings in the breeze between two palm trees on a bright white shore. Waiting for you to return, to come home anytime. This is our home. And as the meditation comes to an end, so does our workshop here together. You can either stay in meditation, breathing these ocean breaths, or you can begin to move and stretch and look for ways to integrate this peace into the rest of your day. I hope so much this teaching and practice brought you and brings you benefit. I'll see you next time.